You are welcome to Ogbo Media House. My name is Gabriel Agbo Ilama, your regular host on Leadership Conversation. In our previous conversation, I spoke on the maker of real leaders, and we identify what makes someone real leader. But today, we'll be looking at leaders' thought. I title it as Think as a Leader. Think as a leader. That is what I'm going to speak on this hour. Nowadays, especially in Nigeria, we are facing a lot of challenges from the leadership perspective. Everyone is wondering, complaining that the leaders are not doing what is expected of them. And that has been a problem in the country. And I want to bring to your knowledge that if leaders could not perform as expected of them, it means they are not thinking as leader. Every leader that couldn't think as a leader will not be able to perform effectively. That is, leaders' thought, in the large extent, can influence their performance, either positively or negatively. That is why today we'll be looking at leaders' thought. Think as a leader. So I want to, first of all, identify some aspects that leaders are supposed to be thinking on. So if a leader could not think effectively, he will not be able to deliver leadership effectively. That is why I urge you, my viewer, as you are listening to me, please pay more attention so that you will be able to get some things that will help you in your leadership journey. So the first thing we are going to be looking at as the way a leader should think is leaders always think of the available resources. Leaders always think of the available resources. As a leader, you don't have to be thinking of where to get what. Every leader should know that people are the greatest asset of every leader. And what you should be thinking of as a leader is how to make use of the available resources to get what you want. Without that, you will not be able to achieve meaningfully in your leadership journey. That is why in Nigeria today, we are having a lot of challenges in leadership, especially as a country. We are indebted to so many countries, we owe debt. Why? Because our leaders often borrow. They borrow from time to time to tackle national financial challenges, and which is not the right thing. As a leader, the first thing you should be thinking of is the available resources. We can see this in the life of Jesus Christ, the leader of all leaders. In Matthew chapter 15, when you read from verse 32 to 34, you will see the difference between the way leaders think and the way mere achievers and the followers think. In that story, the disciple of Jesus, they thought as an achiever. They thought as an achiever. They think of where to get what. When they were faced with the challenge of people hunger, that the people around them needed to be fed. So they were thinking of where to get what. Jesus told them to find something for the people to eat. And the simple thought that came to them was, where can we get food to feed these people? They couldn't think of the available resources. But when Jesus as a leader wanted to approach the situation, he did not think of where to get what. What he thought of is what is available to them at that time. So Jesus asked his disciples, say, how many loaves do you have? That is how a leader should be thinking. A leader should always think of the available resources in tackling the problem of leadership. In solving the societal problem, a leader should be able to think of the available resources. Then number two thing that the leader, or the number two way a leader should think, is leaders should always thinking of themselves. thinking of themselves. As a leader, you have to think of yourself. That does not mean that you should be thinking how to accumulate the wealth for yourself to look good. But we are saying that as a leader, you should be thinking of yourself. That is, be the reader of yourself. Read yourself so that you will be able to tell the people the truth about your personality. You should be thinking of your skill, your strength, your weaknesses, and your current state of mind. This is what we mean by thinking of yourself. Be the reader of yourself. Read yourself so that you will be able to tell your followers the truth about your personality. What are we facing in the society today? There are so many people that come out to vie for our leadership position. They don't even know themselves much. So they lie to the society. They tell the society lies about their personality. And when the society gets to discover, they will simply withdraw themselves from you. So as a leader, I am advising you to think as a leader, be able to read yourself, be able to know who you are, so that you will be able to tell the people about your strength, your weaknesses, your capacity, what you can do. That is one other way that leaders should think. Then number three way that leaders should think is that leaders are readers of situations. Leaders are readers of situations. Anything that happens around us does so in order to give us the picture of the future. Anything that happens around us does so in order to give us the bigger picture of the future. That is, as a leader, when something is happening in your society, you are not supposed to react like any other person. You are not supposed to respond like any other person. Leaders have the ability to step back from what is happening to see what could be the outcome of the happening. That is what the leader thinks. They don't only think of where they are with their people, but they always think of where they are heading for. That is a leader thought. As a good leader, you should always step back from what is happening in your society, not to respond as everyone is responding. You should be able to look at it from the other side. That is, as a good leader, when something happens, a leader could smell a change from anything that happened around them, so that they will be able to effect a change in any area that requires change. That is another way that a leader should be thinking. If you are a leader, you have to learn these things so that you will be able to lead effectively. Then number fourth way that a leader should be thinking is leaders should be thinking about people, reading the people. Reading the people. One time, American president by name Lyndon B. Johnson said, if you walk into a room and you cannot tell who is for you and who is against you, you do not belong in politics. If you walk into a room and you cannot tell who is for you and who is against you, then you do not belong in politics. That is, as a leader, you should be able to read people, know their fear, know their expectation, know their feeling. That is, you should be able to know what the people are thinking by their feelings. When you see people as a leader, you should be able to know what is going on in their thought, what they are expected from you. That is one of the things that our people are lacking. Once they get into the position of leadership, they don't think of what the people are thinking anymore. They don't think of what the people want anymore. All they do is what they want. If you are like that, I bet you that in your leadership, you will not be able to have a sustainable followership. As a leader, you should be able to read the people. Know what is the fear of the people. Know what is their expectation. Know what they are thinking. When something is happening, don't just look at it and relax. But you should be able to read the people and know what they are thinking. Then another way that leaders should be thinking is the way to respond to situations. Thinking through the leadership lens. Thinking through the leadership lens. Just as I'm sitting before the camera right now, there is a lens in the camera. So the same thing in leadership, we have leadership lens. So when you are thinking, you should be thinking within the leadership lens, so that you don't go outside the scope of leadership. In most times, people don't know how to respond when situations occur. Most times, people respond to situations outside the leadership lens. Take for instance, when somebody assumes office and you are not the first person in that office, somebody has been there before you get there. They call it predecessor. When you get to the office, instead of you to respond to situation through the leadership lens, you started criticizing your predecessor directly. No, that is not the way. As a leader, you should be able to respond to situation through the leadership lens. Don't criticize people directly, but you can criticize the system. Don't speak against the people directly, but you can speak against the system. Don't try to correct somebody directly, but you can correct the system. That is what is requested of a leader. We can find this in the book of Luke. Jesus demonstrated this in the book of Luke, chapter 19. When the people requested of him to emulate Elijah, to call fire, to consume the people, Jesus refused. He did not criticize Elijah by saying that Elijah did wrong, but rather he responded to his disciple and said, you do not know the kind of spirit you have by requesting my permission for you to call fire to kill the people. That is what a leader should do. Jesus did not criticize Elijah for calling fire to kill the people, but he criticized the system. He told the apostles themselves that the attitude they are developing at that moment is not acceptable to God. That is what a leader should do. So I want to encourage you with these 5 points. As a leader, begin to examine your thought. How are you thinking? The difference between you and the follower is not the position, but it's in the way you think. The way you think determine or prove whether you are a leader or not. So you have to learn this from now. As you are watching me, wherever you are watching me from, I want you to begin to look at your life as a leader. Read yourself, read situation, read people, respond through the leadership plan, and then always think of the available resources. That is one thing we are lacking in this country. The first point is seriously lacking in this country. That is why our leaders always borrow from time to time. So I encourage you and I urge you, if you are a potential leader or you are right now in a leadership position, learn to practice these 5 things. And it will take your leadership to a whole new level. May God bless you as you listen. And I want to draw the conclusion here, or the curtain here, by urging you to follow us in all our social media handles. When you follow us, you will not regret. We have more for you. See you next time. Remain blessed.